My name is Teresa Colburn. I'm 49 years old, divorced, and I raised my son as a single mother after his father vanished when he was just 2. I worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and skipped meals so he wouldn't have to. And now, I was being told I didn't belong at his wedding. I stood at the edge of the grand white tent, dressed in the only formal outfit I could afford, a soft blue dress I'd ironed twice to keep smooth. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the wedding invitation. One I hadn't actually received, it was emailed to me accidentally by the florist. The moment I walked up the stone path to the venue, I knew something was off. Eyes turned toward me, faces stiffened, and then she came. Brielle, my son's future mother-in-law. Teresa, she said coldly, stepping in front of me before I could even make it past the roses at the entrance. Her heels clicked against the stone like a countdown. You weren't invited, she said bluntly. I blinked, trying to steady my voice. I'm James's mother. I raised him. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to see my son. He asked us to keep it private, she interrupted. For his comfort. He wanted only his family here. Her family. I stared at her, not sure if the words hit harder or the ice in her tone. His family. Did that mean I wasn't? Then came the second blow. James's father, Darren, stepped out of the tent. I hadn't seen him in 17 years. He left when things got hard, when James was sick, when the bills piled up, when I needed a partner. And now, here he was, smiling, dressed in a designer tuxedo like a proud parent. He glanced at me, then smiled at Brielle. Is there a problem? Just a little confusion, she said, placing her hand on his arm. We were just explaining that. This is a private affair, of course, Darren said. We don't want to upset James on his big day. And just like that, they turned their backs. The silence around me grew deafening. The other guests didn't speak, but their eyes did. Discomfort, judgment, pity. I wasn't just being told I didn't belong, I was being erased. I looked around one last time, hoping, praying to catch a glimpse of my son, but they'd kept him hidden, protected from me. I slowly stepped away from the entrance and began walking back down the path, every step heavier than the last. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even argue. I just walked away. But I wasn't broken. Not this time. I had held my tongue for years. For James. For peace. I let Darren skip out on child support. I let Brielle rewrite our story. I let them pretend I didn't exist because I thought love meant sacrifice. But this was the final page. They thought I was weak. They thought I was powerless. They had no idea what I had done behind the scenes. No idea what I had planned for today. As I reached the end of the long gravel driveway, I opened my phone and tapped on a message thread I had hidden in plain sight. It's time, I typed. Start now. I didn't go home. I didn't cry in the car or scroll through old pictures of James as a boy. I wasn't that woman anymore. Instead, I drove 2 blocks down the road and parked behind the sprawling estate of the Lanigan family, the bride's side. From here, I had a clear view of the garden venue. Rows of white chairs, golden table runners, pastel flowers arranged like a fairy tale. It was all very curated. I rolled down my window and waited. 5 minutes later, a sleek black van pulled up beside me. The driver stepped out, a tall man in his early 30s wearing a dark suit and an earpiece. Ma'am, he greeted me with a soft nod. We're set. All eyes on your signal. Good, I said calmly, my fingers still tight around my phone. We do this clean, no drama, just truth. I stepped out and took a deep breath. The cool breeze brushed against my skin, but it wasn't the weather that gave me chills. It was knowing that after today, nothing would ever be the same. Inside the tent, soft music played and guests were being seated. I wasn't there, but I knew exactly what was happening. I'd memorized the schedule because I had paid for it. That was the secret none of them knew. The venue, the catering, the string quartet, the flower arrangements, all paid for by the Sutton Trust. They thought it was a sponsor Brielle had found to lighten the burden, a generous anonymous donor. But the Sutton Trust didn't exist. It was me. I created the fund 3 years ago when I sold my late mother's farmhouse and invested the money. I'd built it in secret, planning for James's future. I never imagined I'd use it like this. I never told James because I didn't want him to feel guilty. I just wanted him to have the wedding he dreamed of. I thought maybe if I gave quietly, they'd let me stay quietly. But now they had told me I didn't belong. Now they were about to learn exactly who had made this dream day possible. Back at the venue, the music faded. The officiant walked to the center of the floral arch, and the whispers quieted as everyone turned toward the aisle. The bride, Camille, was about to enter. That's when it happened. A voice echoed through the hidden speakers placed around the tent. It wasn't loud. It was calm, clear, female. Before this ceremony continues, the voice said, I'd like to ask a question. Murmurs erupted. Guests looked around. The staff froze. Do you know who funded this wedding? Silence. Brielle's face went pale. She looked around, confused, then furious. The voice continued. The flowers, flown in from Italy, paid for. The chairs and linen from the designer brand you boasted about, paid for. The orchestra, paid. Not by the bride's family, not by the groom's father, but by the woman you left standing in the parking lot an hour ago. The mother of the groom, Teresa Colburn. Gasps filled the tent. Darren stood, eyes wide. James, just a few steps from the altar, looked like he'd been slapped. His brows furrowed, lips parted, speechless, and Camille, she looked at him, then at her mother, her cheeks flooding with color. Today, the voice said, still steady, you told a woman she wasn't welcome at her son's wedding. You erased her, shamed her. And yet, everything around you, every bite, every flower, every second of this fairy tale is here because of her. Brielle snapped. Turn that off. Who is doing this? Too late. From the back of the tent, I stepped in wearing the same soft blue dress, but this time, I wasn't trying to blend in. Heads turned. I walked down the aisle slowly, not with drama, but with dignity. People moved aside, unsure, stunned, some ashamed to meet my eyes. James didn't move. His eyes locked on mine, and I finally spoke with no microphone. Just my voice. I didn't come to ruin your wedding, James, I said softly. I came to see you smile, to see you become the man I raised, the one who used to kiss my hand after every school lunch I packed, the one who held my pinky when he was scared. I swallowed hard, but when I arrived, I was told I didn't belong. Gasps again. Some looked toward Brielle, others stared at the floor. I continued. I was quiet for too long. I allowed people to rewrite my story, to act like I was never part of yours. I gave everything I had so you could have today, and they tried to erase me from it. James stepped forward. Mom? His voice cracked, and then he did something I didn't expect. He stepped off the altar, walked down the aisle, and hugged me. Not a polite, stiff embrace, a real one, tight, long, painful. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered. Because I didn't do it to be seen, I said. I did it because I love you. I didn't know they. He looked toward Darren and Brielle. You do now. Camille hesitated. Then slowly, she walked over too. She looked scared, unsure. I didn't know, either, she said quietly. I swear I thought you didn't want to come. I'm sorry, Mrs. Colburn. I nodded once. No anger, just clarity. Darren stepped forward next, but I turned slightly. I didn't need his words. This moment wasn't about him. This was about me, the woman they thought they could leave in silence. And the silence was finally over. A strange stillness hung in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks loose. Everyone watched, not blinking, not breathing, as the groom stood beside his mother instead of his bride. James didn't say anything for a moment. His hand rested on my shoulder, and his eyes darted between me and the guests. Then he turned slowly, to face the crowd. I didn't know what happened outside this tent, he said, his voice clear but tight with emotion. No one told me my mother had come. No one told me she was turned away. His voice faltered. I just assumed she didn't want to be here. You could hear the heartbreak in that one sentence. I felt it like a blade in my chest, but I didn't let him carry that guilt. I squeezed his hand. It's not your fault. James looked at Brielle. Did you do this? Brielle stepped back, her arms folded. I did what was best for your day, James. Your mother, she's unpredictable. She causes drama. That word drama echoed louder than anything. James blinked. Drama? He pointed at the tent, at the flowers, the band, the embroidered programs. All this was hers. You let my mother pay for this wedding, then locked her out like a gatecrasher. Now Camille stepped in, nervous. James, we didn't know she was the one who paid. Then maybe you should have asked, James said. His tone wasn't yelling, but it was sharp, cold, honest. Or maybe you were just too comfortable believing the worst. I wanted to tell him it wasn't worth fighting over, not on his wedding day. But he wasn't done. He turned to Darren. And you, Dad, where were you all these years? When I had asthma attacks, when I needed someone to show me how to shave, when I cried after mom worked the night shift and still packed me lunch before school. You weren't there. Darren opened his mouth, but James raised his hand. I used to believe your lies, that mom drove you away, that you were dealing with things, but now I see it. You left because she made you uncomfortable, because you couldn't handle a strong woman who did what you should have done. The room was frozen. Darren finally said, "You're just emotional, son. It's your wedding day." James looked him dead in the eye. "No, I'm finally seeing clearly." And then, something wild happened. One by one, guests started standing. First, it was an older couple I didn't know them who rose slowly and clapped. Then a few others, and then more. Not loud applause. Not forced. Just genuine. It was as if they'd all been holding something in guilt, discomfort, shame, and watching James stand beside me gave them permission to breathe. And still, Brielle didn't move. She just stood frozen like a statue in a burning building, watching her perfect plan unravel. An hour later, the wedding was delayed. Camille and James went to the bridal lounge with me, just the three of us. Camille was quiet, wringing her hands. She finally looked at me and said, "I was wrong. I judged you without even knowing you." I nodded. "That happens, but what matters is what you do next." She leaned forward. "If you'll still come to the wedding, I'd be honored to have you walk James down the aisle." My eyes filled, but I didn't let the tears fall. "You sure?" Camille looked at my son. "He is who he is because of you. That deserves to be seen." James smiled. "And it's about time I gave you that walk. After all, you walked me through everything else." We stepped back into the garden after a short break. The chairs had been reset, the guests seated again, but this time, I wasn't standing outside. I stood beside James, arm in arm, and when the music played again, it wasn't just a restart, it was a rewrite. People didn't whisper anymore. They smiled. Some nodded. Some even wiped tears. When we reached the altar, I kissed James's cheek and whispered, "This time, you're not walking alone." And then I stepped aside, not in silence, not in shame, but with the kind of pride no one could steal. I stood right in the front row. In the seat they never reserved for me, because now, I didn't need permission. I had earned my place, and everyone knew it. The ceremony continued, but this time, with new meaning. It wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning, a rewriting. The air felt lighter, clearer, like the lies and pride that once clouded the day had finally lifted. I sat in the front row, still in the same simple blue dress, still with the same worn heels, but now I wore something far more powerful: respect. James stood tall, his shoulders back, but his eyes softened every time he looked in my direction. Camille beside him, nervous at first, now radiated something genuine: a quiet strength, a touch of humility. The officiant cleared his throat and began again. "We are gathered here today to witness not just the union of two hearts, but the strength of truth, the power of presence, and the reminder that love at its core is built on sacrifice." He looked toward me when he said sacrifice. And for once, I didn't shrink from the word. When James and Camille exchanged vows, there were no shaky lines, no forced declarations. They spoke with more truth than they likely ever expected. "I vow," James said, "to never forget where I came from, and who stood beside me, even when others walked away." Camille followed, her voice trembling just slightly. "I vow to honor the woman who taught the man I love what loyalty, grit, and unconditional love truly mean." I wasn't crying, but I was very, very close. After the vows, after the cheers, and after Camille's dad tried awkwardly to reclaim control of the day with a bland toast, James stood up again. "I know this isn't usual," he said into the mic, "but I want to say something before the music starts." The crowd hushed. He turned to me. "Mom, can you stand up, please?" I did. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. For a terrifying second, I thought he was proposing to me. I chuckled under my breath at the ridiculousness of the moment, but inside the box was something simple: a gold pendant, small, subtle, but etched with 3 words that shattered me. "You belong here." He clasped it around my neck with shaking hands. "I should have given this to you years ago," he said. "And I don't just mean at my wedding." The guests were quiet, but it wasn't the silence of discomfort. It was reverence, and maybe a little shame too, because now everyone could see what they missed. Not a drama-stirring woman, not an overbearing mother, but someone who loved quietly, gave without credit, and still showed up when it would have been easier to walk away forever. The reception began, but not the way Brielle had envisioned. Gone were the stiff formalities, the fake laughs, the curated seating charts. People moved, freely, talked, danced, and most importantly felt. James danced with Camille, then with me, then others joined in. And eventually, even Camille's younger cousins who had barely looked at me earlier waved me into a group photo like I'd always been part of the family. I wasn't pretending to fit in anymore. I was just being seen, fully, clearly. And they finally understood. Toward the end of the night, I stepped outside the tent and into the garden. The string lights above me blinked softly, and the air smelled of grass and vanilla cake. I needed a moment to breathe. That's when Brielle approached. Her heels crunched on the gravel, but she walked slower now. Her eyes didn't carry the same sharpness, more like something dulled and tired. I didn't expect today to go like this, she said flatly. Neither did I replied. There was a pause. Then she looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time since we met, I misjudged you. That was all she said, and honestly, that was enough. I nodded. We all make mistakes. Then I turned and walked away, not out of spite but because I didn't need her apology to validate me. I already had everything I came for. That night, I got home and took off my shoes. I sat at the edge of my modest bed, pendant still warm against my skin. I stared at the photos James had just texted me of us dancing, of the pendant moment, of the look on his face when he saw me walking down the aisle, and I smiled, because the day they tried to erase me became the day I stood taller than I ever had before, not with noise, not with revenge, but with truth, with grace, and with the quiet, undeniable power of a mother who never stopped loving even when they shut every door. They said I didn't belong, but I rewrote the whole story.